Look, I think there are two or three things that stand out. The first is that you can obviously win Lions. You consistently win Lions at Cannes, but probably not as many as you should. And I think one of the things the industry needs to look at is the number of submissions they're putting in, because there is a correlation between the number of entries made vis-a-vis the number of Lions won. But I think equally important is to look at the categories, because in categories like mobile, cyber, you're just not entering anything at all. And I think there are real opportunities here, and I simply don't believe that in a country where the mobile is the main form of digital interface, that in fact there isn't that creative element that can be exploited. Quite often it's a case of the industry isn't aware of its own skill base in this regard, and I think it needs to have a good, long, hard look at these new categories, the digital categories that are changing the world and will continue to change the world, and ultimately the industry needs to embrace that in a more concrete and solid way. Generally the agency that's going to enter, and I think if anything it's more a realisation by the agency of the need to look very hard at that category, because it may well be some of the work is already existing, they just don't have the belief they can win at Cannes. And I think that's the whole point, that they've got to look at it harder to see what work they have in all of the categories, and not just the obvious categories such as print and outdoor, which are still very strong in this country. I think a large part of it is the confidence issue and the awareness issue that in fact they can win. And a great example was 2 years ago, the Grand Prix in mobile was won by the Philippines for an analogue idea. It wasn't a super advanced digital idea, it was an analogue idea. And great ideas speak all languages, and I do believe the industry just needs to look harder at all the categories, see where the good work is, and then try and enter it cross-category to, in fact, ensure that they've got the best possible chance of winning across as many categories as they possibly can. My opinion is simple. If you're just creating work to win awards, then there is no point. The whole point of work is to drive your clients' sales. So it's got to be real work for real clients with a creative edge. There's no question of that whatsoever. But the reality is that there is now a body of evidence that clearly is showing that great creativity gives a better return on investment than poor creativity. And it's just a case of what you make, what you submit, has to actually reflect that sorry. has to reflect that position. There is one key area that I think Indonesia's got to embrace, and that's to send young people to events like Cannes, to events like Spikes, to engage them in the young Cannes and Spikes competition. You've got a generation that are digitally enabled, digital natives, that are very open, very freewheeling in terms of their ideas, and they're the people that I think have really got to be embraced and developed. And I think that strategy, alongside a strategy of convincing the marketer why creative work gives a better return on investment than non-creative work, is an important factor that you've got to include in what you're doing going forward. You've got to inspire the young people, engage the young people, show them that they can win, show them that they have a value, and develop them into your next generation of great creative people. The fact of the matter is, great work comes from everywhere, and increasingly Cannes is showing that. That applies to Indonesia with a very, very strong middle class base, as it does to any other country, emerging market in the world. Indonesia should start becoming a powerhouse, but to do that they've got to take the right steps.